All right, and we also have a meeting notes because every meeting is not complete without a notes document. And feel free, if you're comfortable, signing in there, listing a company or interest, anything you're curious to chat about. Then we have kind of a agenda in there. Feel free to add any other items if you want to. Since this is our first call, I thought it'd be nice to kind of have introductions from folks so we kind of know who's here and what you're interested in, or what you're looking from either the call or the broader community and projects we're working on. And then also just kind of like why TestifySec wants to even have a community call. What are we looking to try and accomplish and do before diving into the projects, kind of how we're looking for contributions, what we're looking for, and then no meeting would be complete without a demo because that's always more fun. So yeah, so maybe starting with that, I'll give a brief introduction of myself. My name is John Schell. My last name, even though spelled KJ, is pronounced SH. I'm the director of open source at TestifySec. I joined in the middle of July, so actually right around now. It's been officially 2 months since I've been here. Still coming up to speed on all the deep technical details of all the projects, but having a lot of fun, really enjoying seeing the way that like the Entoto and the Tough communities have grown over the last year. So I've been following them for a long time, and now it's great to get to make that my day job, so to speak. So I'll pass it over to Mikhail to introduce himself next.
Hi, my name is Mikhail. I'm the CTO of TestifySec. Started it with Cole a handful of years ago now, not quite 5. Made witness after working with the Entoto community quite a bit. You know, we saw a lot of interesting use cases in some of the engagements that Cole and I worked with at Boxboat, which was a consultancy we worked for prior to starting TestifySec. Entoto really seemed to fit the bill for what we were trying to do. We found a few things we wanted to do and expand on ideas. So once we did that, we're really hoping to kind of integrate them with Entoto at community at large. And I'll let John speak more to our community efforts back and forth there. But I will kick it over to, let's see, I see Ian on my list.
Sure. Ian Dunbar Hall. Here mainly because we're trying to integrate Witness and other Testify products into our overall secure software supply chain strategy. So kind of here just to see what the current state is, hear a little bit about the roadmap, and then maybe figure out where the gaps are with where we're trying to go so we can help contribute some of those features back. I'll go Sean Boyle.
All right, I'm Sean Boyle. I'm also with Lockheed Martin, here for the same reason as Ian. My focus is more, probably not as much as on how we integrate these tools with containers, but more with more the blobs or the artifacts. So I'm looking to see where that where we're headed with those types of artifacts. So I'll turn it over to Patrick K.
Thanks, Sean. I'm Pat Wachowski. I'm at Lockheed as well, working mainly on platform, so deployment stuff and integration points, like Ian kind of alluded to. So just trying to stay plugged in here and see where we're headed and see where we can contribute back. I'll be honest, I got on here a little late, so I'm not sure who didn't go yet.
We can kick it over to Aditya.
Hey everyone, my name is Aditya. I'm a PhD student at NYU. I've been working on a bunch of Entoto stuff. I'm the maintainer of a couple of Entoto implementations and editor of the enhancements stuff and so on. So super excited to, super excited to see how Witness and Archivista have grown and where they're going from here. Oh, sorry, I will pass it on to Tanner.
Hello, my name is Tanner Jones. I'm a technical account manager at TestifySec. I've been here for about 3 months. Here on the call to provide some support, as well as I work with the Navy and other customers trying to kind of merge customers and end users to TestifySec, work with the platform team to kind of integrate some features and provide some support. So it's great to be here.
So,
I'll
yeah,
pass it on to Cole.
Cole is,
Sorry,
Okay.
John, I'll let you go.
we'll pass it to Chris.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris. I work at TestifySec on the Judge platform, and I'm here because Judge uses Witness and Archivista together to help surface relevant information to users, and just kind of came here to listen in. I'm not sure if there's anybody else on the list. Do we have any?
I think, yep, Fred.
Pass it to Fred then.
Cool. So I'm Frederick. I wear a couple hats here. So I focus a lot on research related stuff with Testify. Archivista is something that I helped come up with and build. So I'm interested to see how all of you react to things, both things you like and dislike. I also authored or co-authored rather the NIST SP 800-204D, which is in draft status. So I would also appreciate any comments you have there as well through the formal channel, so we can make sure we get that to as high a quality as possible. I also am on the I'm on the not technical, but the steering committee for Spiffy, which is a thing that we use for workload identity. We specifically use it for like CI/CD related stuff, but it's used for identity for platforms like GCP and similar. And finally, I'm also co-chair of KubeCon. So any questions on that, you can hit me offline. With that, I think we have everyone.
I think we've heard from Dennis.
Dennis.
Yep.
Oh, hi everyone. My name is Dennis. Currently, I'm a postdoc researcher at NYU as well, and working in the same group as Aditya. So currently, I'm working on the SBOMIT project, and TestifySec and Witness is our main collaborators. So I'm so excited to join this meeting, and would like to see some demos and listen. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for humoring me through the introductions. It's great to get to see everybody and see some familiar faces and new faces as well. So, we'll do the normal plug, like and subscribe, recruit your friends, share. The more people we can get involved in the project, I think the better off we'll be. And so let me I'll go ahead and share my screen to talk about a few different things. And share this. Let's make sure that goes through. So maybe just starting out kind of like why we wanted to have a community call, what we're looking for. And the first part is just, as a company, we believe that everyone deserves secure software. And so trying to really help support that mission includes building tools to help accomplish that, but also supporting the upstream community. So we really want to be supportive of Intoto itself, not just take Witness and run away and say we're using Intoto and never come back. And the same thing with the update framework, SigStore, with OpenSSF. There's so many people involved in this space, all trying to accomplish this broader goal. And we really want to make sure that we give back to that. I think we have a really unique opportunity to kind of bridge some of the gaps between the projects as they stand right now and taking these two customers that are doing a whole bunch of different things and being able to take that information back to the community and help improve the specifications, improve the tooling, and do all that kind of stuff. So, eventually we would like to be able to go through a process to donate Witness and Archivista to the Intoto group. We're still working through all the details of that, and Intoto is proposed for graduation right now through CNCF, and so that's super exciting. We also didn't want to interfere with that process at all, so kind of waiting for that to go through and everything else, and then figure out what's next there. And so we've got a few different projects that we're working on specifically. Witness is the main one that we'll see today. Archivista is a graph store for all of the attestations that Witness can generate, and other attestations as well. And then GoWitness is a library behind Witness that allows you to integrate it directly if you don't want to use the CLI. And then we have a couple of other things that really support that. There's a GitHub action to allow to run Witness. There's some example repos and a policy helper tool that's kind of experimental right now to make creating policies a little easier. We got one of our first contributions from the great folks at Lockheed around a Helm chart for deploying Archivista. And then one of the things I'm working on right now is this Archivista data provider. So this hooks in with the external data provider feature from Gatekeeper to allow you to validate policies with admission control for Kubernetes clusters. So that's a really exciting feature that's been a lot of fun to work on. And then we've got, these meetings, and then, just a shout out to some of these related projects that as a group, we're trying to keep our eye on. Obviously, the Intoto project, the update framework, SigStore is a group that uses Intoto and also generates Intoto-based attestations for some of its workflows. And then also we can leverage Fulcio as a certificate authority issuing to help with signing things. And so we'll talk a little bit about all of the different compatibilities we can have in the future here. But I think that's a super interesting project. Dennis mentioned SBOMIT, and we're really excited to see where that goes, where it's proposed to be a project under the OpenSSF, the Open Source Security Foundation. And so hopefully that goes through. Everything is looking very good, but fingers crossed still until it actually crosses the line. And then, a couple of other groups thinking and talking about a lot of these supply chain security concerns are the CNCF's Tag Security Group and the OpenSSF's Supply Chain Integrity Working Group. And so that's where things like the CNCF Tag Security has the Supply Chain Working Group. They authored a couple of really great papers around supply chain security best practices and software factory. A lot of folks here on the call contributed to that. And then the Supply Chain Integrity Group is responsible for things like SALSA and S2C2F, which is a Microsoft contributed from Microsoft around a framework for the secure consumption of open source. And so when we talk about dependencies and things like that, it's all of these things play into this broader mission of trying to secure software. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff going on, a ton of things we're interested in. And a few minutes ago, we just made our board here public. It's still a work in progress, but basically just kind of tracking issues and things like that. So you can see, like for Archivista, we've got some issues under the to-do column and in progress. We've got a PR to review, and we've got some recent things that have been done. And so we'll update this. We'll add in some labels and tags for good first issues, documentation. Everything that comes in should end up in this triage column. So we're still going through some of the witness issues here. And so as we work through this, we'll kind of get a better view of the things that are going on. And then separate from this, we'll come up with a roadmap view. Some of the major areas that we're thinking about right now are adding different attesters to Witness to do different things. We're working through a concept right now of integrating TUF into Archivista so people can store and distribute policies in a secure way. And understand which policies they should trust, because that's a little bit harder to do right now. And I mentioned the intercompatibility. So, looking towards the idea of being able to verify artifacts that were signed with something like cosign or signed like something like notation, some of the different tools out there for signing artifacts or container images, being able to verify those with witness as a part of policies and other things. And potentially should those tools be able to verify our attestations as well too. And then there's lots of details like different signing formats and envelopes and things like that. And really, we want to drive all of our investments in that area based on feedback from you all who are listening. So if you have opinions about other tools that you're really interested in or other things that you would like to see sooner, definitely you get the privilege since you're here, the opportunity to express those things and help move them up the priority list. And then one of the other areas we're talking about right now is API attesters. So how can we create attestations for things like webhooks or other things, as there's webhooks for so many different things, and that gives you an opportunity if you have a webhook for a harbor registry when container images come in, or different sorts of repository mirrors and things like that. A lot of things that people use have those. And so being able to verify kind of the origin of those things as they come in could be useful from a few different use cases that we've heard. So that's kind of that. Does anybody have any thoughts or ideas? Anything missing that you see? Any ideas that you have about where we could go? All right. Well, we'll give people a chance to think about that. And let's see here. So we talked about, yeah. And like I said, for the how to contribute part, each of the repos right now, we're kind of getting into better shape for accepting those contributions. And we'll have a contributor guide and things like that we're working through. And we have, some of those things in place right now. For, code of conduct is one of the important things as well, of just really making sure that we align with the CNCF and their standards for code of conduct. And we really want to make sure that people feel welcome in joining the community. And we want to make it a safe place for people of different backgrounds to contribute. So you'll see that as well in most of the repos. And like I said, we'll be adding new things for good first issues and other things like that. So if you're looking to dive in, one of the big areas that we'll have a lot of tags for that will be around docs. So that's going to be another big effort, is how do we improve the documentation we have, keep it up to date, keep it current, and really understand something that can be useful to people looking to consume this. All right. And then, does anybody have any other thoughts or questions? And maybe all of this will make more sense after the demo as well too. All right, so we'll jump into that. And we talked a little bit about some of this. So we have a fork of in-total Golang, and one of the things that we've been working on trying to do with this is to add witness into the overall pipeline of this in order to create attestations for all of the different pieces of the supply chain. And so we have in our fork here, we have some GitHub actions. Like I mentioned, the GitHub action for witness itself, for witness run. And the most recent run, we'll just dive into the details here of this. We can see we're going to build this. We're going to set the job up, install Go, check out code, test it, send some coverage stuff, build it, upload some artifacts. Eventually, we'll incorporate the release process and some other things like that into this. But the main things that we have right now are for our checkout code. A lot of people use the GitHub Actions checkout, and that works, and it does a good job at checking out your code. It understands all the GitHub Actions environmental variables. but it doesn't actually create any attestations there. You are trusting that GitHub and GitHub Actions are doing everything that they say they are. And for the most part, you can believe them. But it would also be great to prove that. And so that's why we thought this was kind of interesting. The actual combination of Git commands that you can see here that we wrap are really, the complexity there is to only check out the exact code that you're intending to build. And so when you're doing when this build gets triggered based off of PR or a commit or whatever it is, you don't necessarily want to check out all the other branches, all the other things. Like, then different steps throughout this process could check out a different branch. They could change the set of files you're reading to. This way, only the source code that you intend to build should be there. And this is mostly what the action checkout does. And so we wanted to kind of keep some of those same concerns addressed here. And then it, basically goes through everything. And at the very end of this, you can see we actually store the results of the attestation that's created in Archivista, and it gives you Gitoid for that itself. And we'll see a better place to look at that in a little bit. And then we haven't added the attestation for the test, but that'll be another simple wrapper. And we'll look at the YAML file for this as well too. And then the witness go build is very similar. And so here you can see witness run, and then you can specify the different attestations to create. And then really the command is just as simple as go build -o in total Golang. And so if we look at the summary here, we can see the attestations that were created and the step that it was named. So our clone step, our build step, and there's links to the Archivista. So if we click this link, you see the big, huge, giant attestation in text format. This is much clearer when you download it and do your normal JSON parsing. You get the payload, base64 decode it, and we can take a look at some of those details in a little bit here. And let's bring that back up, actually, because we didn't open a new tab. And so we have our two different attestations here. Let's see here, the workflow file. So really, this is the GitHub action workflow. The only difference here from the previous steps that were here is we use the witness run action, and you can specify the attestations should you enable Archivista or SigStore. In this case, we're signing with Fulcio, so you can use the workload identities that GitHub Actions provides. You could do this with a key management system. You could do this with a lot of different things. But if you're building in the public for, public good open source, this is a really convenient way of doing things. And so really, you just put your command in there. And the go build is a great example of this right here. We just have super simple go build. And that's all it takes to create this attestation, just by doing this. And then at the end, we upload the artifacts just so we can download it and verify with the policy. So we'll go ahead and actually download that so we can make sure that everything works. And I think we've got, I'll bring this over here. We'll delete these old ones. Rename this. 2 is obviously the most recent one. You can see our timestamp today at 10:25 my time. All right, so then if we look at the next step, you created all these attestations, it would be great to verify them. And so in this case, we have a policy that does that. You can see the different steps. We've got our clone step, our build step. For each of these in the policy, you can see the different types of attestations that the policy will require. So there should be an environmental attestation, the GitHub attestation, material, which is the inputs to this. So it will look at all the files on disk in the directory where you're running your command. So we know basically what the inputs are to that command. And then tracing or attestations around the command itself that is executed, and then the product or the results that are created following that command. So in our case, we did a go build, we got an in total Golang binary that was built at the end of that, and that will be inside of the product attestation. In the case of the git clone, the product is every single source file that you checked out and a hash of every single source file. So that way you can do something really cool, like in our build step, you have artifacts from. And so we can make sure that the material attestation should match exactly with the product attestation of the previous step. And so that way, you know, everything that you checked out is everything that's the input to the build step. And this is another thing kind of with that, that environment of GitHub Actions, you really, as you have all these different steps in your workflow, you don't know what's in between the previous step and the next step. Even if you put the two of them next to each other, like in our case, we had a test step, a test coverage step in between. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen in those workflows. And GitHub Actions just stores the shared context between the steps, because you need that a lot of times when you're doing a CI/CD workflow. But in this case, we can make sure that you have that continuity. And then the you know, the same set of attestations here, and then you can see our Rego policy for these different attestations. So in the case of our build here, you know, and once again we get our lovely base64 encoding, but I have the version of these saved that's a little more readable. You know, this is super simple. We want our input commands to be go build -o in total Golang. And you could do this for any command run pretty easily, as simple as this. And then on the GitHub side, since we have a GitHub attester, the thing we're looking for here is, did this really come from the project that we're expecting? And so we can verify that just by the variables that we capture from that. And so then we get down into the functionaries area, which is basically, who do you trust to have done this step? And so in this case here, we're saying that we trust this big blob of stuff, which we have as a type root. But really, this is a certificate constraint. So in this case, we used full CO to sign everything, and we get a URI for this that points directly at our workflow for the GitHub action. And so we can know that this is who requested that, and we can validate that this actually came from GitHub Actions. That information is stored in the certificate. And so here you can see the kind of that hierarchical root of trust going up to the intermediate certificate of full CO to the root certificate of SigStore. And so you can go, you publicly see these things and know that this chain of certificates all the way down to the one issued for the action itself is one that you trust. And then we also have a timestamp on this, because if you're in an air-gapped environment or somewhere else removed, and you need to be able to verify this without looking up an entry in Recore as the transparency log, the way that full CO works is it creates a short-lived certificate. So it's only valid for 10 minutes. And we need to use the timestamp to verify that the object was signed, the attestation was signed within that time frame, so that it's valid. That way, if the key leaked or something else and it was signed outside that window, the certificate's expired and it won't be a valid signature. So that's another kind of cool thing. And going back to the community efforts, this whole thing is kind of wrapped in this envelope called DSSE or Dizzy envelope. And right now that has really good support for key pairs, and we're working on extending support to that for things like these extensions here, kind of being able to trust certificates, being able to trust timestamp authorities, so that you can really formalize that and have it also like validated and vetted by the broader community. So with all of that said, we can look here, and just for the your policy has to be signed. And so in this case, we just have a policy key here in this directory. The policy JSON is the one that we're looking at, and then that'll create a policy signed JSON. And then when we do witness verify, we have Archivista enabled, so we can go and query the attestations out there and see if we can actually verify all of this, and we get verification succeeded. Now, the other thing that we can do is we can check these gitoids here against the GitHub action. And this is probably going to be difficult to read, but we should see here BF3E to 011 is the first one here. And then the next one here being AA79 ending in 71FT. So here we know this corresponds exactly there. That level of validation is more or less internal here, but if you're looking for that external, I'm a user looking at this sanity check kind of thing. Like I had this policy signed before, I had the policy created before, but we're really validating against this in toto Golang version that I had just downloaded. And so it has the SHA of that stored for all these attestations. And that's, how we're able to verify that. So that's my whirlwind demo of a few different things. We've got the idea of creating attestations, creating a policy, how to verify those attestations, and doing all of that in the context of a GitHub action workflow. So yeah, anybody have any thoughts or questions about that? I did a brilliant job of explaining everything, and it all made perfect sense. That's my takeaway.
I guess I have one. So just so I understand this right. So it sounds like the way the attesters work today, you have multiple types of attesters. So you have like the pre-material attester, which would run, say in this case, the Git attester. And then you'd have a separate one that would run for material. Is that correct? That would be like the file attester. So effectively you'd get two attestations out of that operation. And that first step.
So we store everything as an attestation collection, and you have those different attestations inside of that. And I think the right term, like there's a different predicate for each type of attestation. And I'll let Michaela or Aditya correct me. But we can, something that's helpful, and we'll see if I can find the right, there is a tester life cycle.
Yeah, I believe it's a little further down that page you're on now.
All right, a tester, here's the tester life cycle. And so this picture, if I can make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah, so I think something that we suffer from a little bit right now, and what specifically is we're overloading the term attester or attestation quite a bit. We have an attestation that's an attestation collection that has attesters. Predicate is definitely the language I think the in-toto community is kind of converging on for some of the things we're currently calling attesters.
Yeah, and so you can see, this life cycle in different opportunities. So you can have a pre-attester before anything happens. So that's you see the Git or the package attesters there. A material attester. So this is just looking at all the files that are there. And I think that's just that one. The environment one, Michaela, is that a pre-attester or a material attester?
Apparently it's a pre-attester, yeah. Our only material and product attesters at the time were just file hashes, but we left them as potential. There could be other things. We just can't think of anything at the moment.
And then the command run attester, looking at the process. Also, you can enable tracing for this. I think Cole or someone else did this tracing on a build of the Linux kernel itself and ended up with like 800 megabyte attestation because it traced every single system call throughout that entire process. But for, it'd be really hard to write a policy to incorporate all of those things. But from a forensic analysis point later on, to be able to go back and actually inspect those things in detail to figure out was someone manipulating somewhere could have a lot of value. And then the post-attesters are another one that are super interesting. The idea of having a container post-attester, etch-bomb. This is one of the areas you're looking at, like, could we create a salsa post-attester and generate that salsa provenance document? And really, that's may not have as much content or detail as all the other attestations, but if it's in the right format for other people to understand and it has the other tooling built around that, it's something that we would be looking to support potentially. So all of that, outputs this whole attestation context that gets signed, stored in the envelope, and then sent over to Archivista. So yeah, that's kind of the high speed overview of the attestation lifecycle.
Do any of
But
these?
it also,
I was gonna ask, do any of these attesters run by default? So if I specify, the Git attester, does the material attester automatically run, or do I need to call them out individually?
yeah. So the material attester, the product attester always run. I think the command run, there always has to be something that runs, right? Mikhail.
Yeah, currently that is true. The material command and product attesters pretty much are always run. You could do some tricks like have a command that just runs echo or something to get kind of like a null command. And we're kind of investigating what it might look like to have an attestation that just collects information instead of transformations that a command would capture. By default, if you don't supply anything to the CLI, you're going to get the Git, the environment. The Git and the environment attesters, I think, the two default ones. But once you start supplying it to the command, the CLI, you start overriding the defaults, and then there's some UX thoughts we have to do there.
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone? And I think that this, the modular nature of these attestations are another thing that are unique, as far as I know, to Witness, in this idea of creating the in-toto attestations. Being able to segment these out into different attesters allows that flexibility and that composability of what's the information that's actually useful and even possible to gather at different points in times, depending on where you are in the supply chain and the development lifecycle. So, and this is where hopefully all of you can provide feedback as well of, well, what are the other possible attestations that would be useful? What's the other information that we could gather that you would want to write policy around? That's another area. It's like a lot of the value of the attestations come into what do you want to verify. And so with the policy, we can verify anything inside the attestation. So yeah, but that is pretty much everything for the demo.
Actually, I have a question, somewhat related. Is there a desire or plan to provide a public-facing like Archivista for downstream people to start pulling items out of, or is there any plans for that?
Yes, and it's already there. You can go to archivista.testifysec.io, and you'll see the GraphQL UI. So you actually can build some queries and things like that if you want to play around with it and kind of see the graph structure of everything. And then that's what's used by the GitHub action by default today. So that's where it'll send everything to store the attestations if you're using that.
Sweet, thanks.
I do want to add a heavy caveat that right now that instance is in the dev state. It is subject to change. We have no SLAs built around it. That will change in the future, but at the moment it is very heavily beta state. So we have it up there. We've never wiped the data out of it. We've never nuked everything, but it's always a possibility. So just keep that in mind while using it currently.
I have another question. I guess you talked a little bit about maybe a future state with webhooks. That seems like a fairly divergent view of how Witness is used compared to today. Can you maybe talk a little bit to that? Are you thinking would Witness be run as a service, or I guess I'm trying to mentally see how that would tie in to the products today compared to where it's going?
Yeah, I think it's heavily debated still, and really it's a balance for the consumers in terms of what set of information to trust, and we don't want to make the decisions for them, for any users around that, and part of it as well is the same as any other like secure system. Depending on when or where you do things, heavily influences the validity or security of that. So we can, you could create a lot of attestations that don't mean anything, or have contents that are falsified or invalid because of how or when they were created. And so we want to work through all those concerns and things with the idea of webhooks. I think that there is like a general need to be able to create attestations for things that are more like API based, to store the information about when something happened, about how something happened, and be able to verify that information later. So if you're pulling in, packages for like internal mirror of RPMs or node modules or anything like that, to be able to know that like we pulled this in and this is a version we can use internally. It's been vetted or validated by whatever process we have. And then, when you actually go to build, like, was that internal process actually adhered to? So you could create a policy around that to verify, but you have to have those attestations to write the policy to verify that more like organizational thing that was supposed to happen actually did happen. And maybe that didn't actually answer your question, but I don't know, Mikhail, if you have any other thoughts about that too.
Yeah, I think you covered it fairly well from my perspective. We've heard it time and time again that there are just some things that want to be captured that's not part of like the CI/CD workflow, or part of like someone clicked a button in the UI and then a webhook gets sent out that we need to capture information about. We haven't fleshed it out entirely, but it's something we're very cognizant of and thinking about all the ramifications of.
Yeah, and I think the idea of leveraging a webhook versus like one other possible alternative that I think would be much less desirable would be like some sort of scraping attestation, where you just go out and like query an API on your own and say like, here's an attestation around that data that was captured, because that could be a lot harder to validate. I mean, it just it makes the window of potential compromise or other things much wider than knowing like at the time that the action was executed or intercepted. So awesome questions though. All right. Well, did anybody have anything else they wanted to chat about? I don't know if I don't see anybody adding anything to the agenda, but we'll post the recording of this as well to our YouTube channel once I figure out how to get access to that. And that way, if you can't make a meeting, this should always be recorded and posted afterwards. Or if you just want to watch it at 1.5x, 2x to save yourself some time, always understand that. Yeah, but we'll have this call again next month, and hopefully we'll have some cool updates on the progress of these things, demo of other things. Probably the external data provider would be a cool demo for next time. If anybody else has any demos they want to do or anything else, definitely would love to have that as well too. So,
and one thing I do want to pitch in here with is John showed off the project board earlier on where we're tracking our issues and kind of our triage of work. Another thing that we're trying to encourage as well is the GitHub discussions. We have a few discussions out there of like bigger picture ideas that we haven't really entirely fleshed out, that we're looking for feedback on or thinking about how we're going to do it. That's also a great place for community questions if it's not during a meeting. So if something comes up and you have questions about something and maybe it's not an issue, the discussion board is a great place for it. So feel free to encourage you all to get involved there as well if anything comes up.
absolutely. And I think we'll have to try and figure out if people are interested in some sort of more synchronous, asynchronous communication as well. And GitHub discussions are great, but everybody has a Slack instance for something, and then we don't want to add just one more Slack instance to everybody. But I think that'll be another thing. And we also don't want to crash the party of like the Intoto Slack channel until we actually become a part of that group. So we'll see if anybody has any thoughts or ideas around that area. Let us know. But otherwise, we're in all those Slacks too. So feel free to ping any of us directly if anything comes up, and we can help you out.
So one thing you could do is you could probably set up a chat room in either the PNCF Slack or the OpenSSF Slack. We just want to make sure we ping them first so that they're okay with it. But we did the same with Omnivore earlier, where we were able to get their permission to set one up, even though it was not an OpenSSF project, and that reduces the proliferation of Slack URLs at that point.
That would be awesome. I'm always here, like in the CNCF Slack, if people would accidentally join Witness when they intended to join the Vitesse Slack channel or something, because that's a separate project. But anyways, all right. Well, with that, if anybody's gonna have any last minute things, thank you everybody for joining and attending. Super excited to hear from everybody in the future. Hopefully you all have a chance to use Witness and Archivista. Please send us any feedback or anything else, or just updates on how you're using it, what you're up to. And we look forward to chatting again next month.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.